All right, let's get Twitter on here because I accidentally messed that up a little earlier, and other Facebook groups. Get that one going here. Take a sip of coffee. I started a new coffee from Patrick today, Lion Coffee. Very good. So pre-ceremonious sips. You're still rocking the
I'm still
sanitized one.
sanitizing this thing. Yes, I am.
I got a new Yeti thermos, so I'm really happy about that. All right. Welcome in, guys. Welcome in. It is Thursday morning, the 29th of December, and it's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell, and joined by, as always, for these morning shows, Scott Kennedy. Scott, how you doing? Happy last show of the week to you. Enjoying yourself? You got any big plans?
Not yet. Not yet. Just going over to a little college football watch party on Saturday. I think that's about it. And then my mom's birthday is actually the 31st. So everybody wants to party on her birthday. So we'll be checking that out.
Well, awesome. Happy early birthday to your mom. Everyone chat and make sure you wish Scott's mom a early happy birthday there. And man, I'm really excited for these college football playoff games. I mean, the Broncos game this is probably the least enthusiastic I've been for a game for a bit. I mean, we didn't even mention it in the show because this is typically a preview show. What's there to preview? 16 Broncos are on the injury report. They have 24 guys on IR, and they're going into Arrowhead for probably a slaughter. I mean, what's the spread should be like 17. I don't even know if that's enough.
You've heard me say before, there is a certain calmness in utter doom.
Yeah.
You know, it's when it's like, wait a minute, and when they jump out 14-0 and you start going, maybe, and then you're like, damn it, I knew not to get my hopes up. You know, it's just there's a certain calmness. There's nothing to lose. Go out there and anything you get is gravy.
Yep.
It's actually a very stress-free game this weekend, honestly.
Yeah, it really is. It kind of reminds me of I think I mentioned this when you mentioned there's a certain calmness in utter doom. The very end of Toy Story 3. No spoilers out there, but when they're sitting there and they're going to that incinerator and they just kind of all hold hands and are quiet. I mean, it's like, yep, this is the end. We're all just going down. At least we have each other. But plenty to talk about today. We'll get a little bit into this Broncos-Chiefs game, some rumors, and also I think this is very much of note. And I wanted to open up with this. Scott may have been reading too much into this, but there's potentially no Broncos reporter as connected to the team as Mike Kliss, Channel 9 News. Mike Kliss. Now, maybe there's a little bit of he's maybe not as close now that Elway's gone because Kliss and Elway were really close, but still very close. And Kliss tweeted out last night a list of the 2024 quarterback prospects saying, keep an eye on this and make sure you go back and watch Drake May versus Bo Nix if you didn't watch it already. Reading too much into that? Is he just reading the leaves? I mean, a lot of people, Russell Wilson has this massive contract, but he's already tweeting out guys for next year's first round quarterback list.
No, it makes sense. I mean, you look at the contract, you look at it could be you're throwing a bone to people who are saying we're ready to move on from Mike Kliss, from Russell Wilson. But realistically, the soonest it can happen would be after next season. So, hey, keep an eye on 2024. That's not going to be a surprise to anybody, and anybody shouldn't be offended if you're the quarterback or you're anybody involved with the Denver Broncos and someone was talking about, hey, you might not last past 2023. You shouldn't be offended or surprised that you might not last past this weekend. So, you know, you've got contracts. There's guys that are safer than others, but nobody should be under the impression that their job is safe, other than maybe like, you know, Pat Surtain. That's it, really. Justin Simmons, maybe, but his contract is even questionable. I mean,
yeah.
When you're playing like this, when you've had a season like this, when you're firing a coach in season for performance, not for, you know, extracurricular activities, everybody's freaking job is on the line.
Yeah.
Everybody's.
Definitely thought it was of note, though, that Kliss is tweeting this out, and he says, quote, Broncos figure to be all over this QB list in 2024. I mean, I wouldn't say that's shots fired, but that's very much
it is
showing your hand.
It is, especially for, you know, for a mouthpiece of the team, you know, an unofficial mouthpiece of the team to come out and say something like that. That it makes a lot of sense.
And it's something
Albert Knopfler's coming and saying, good morning, Albert. So I'm assuming that's what it is. I mean, you know, some language is close enough, but
it's German.
Good morning to you, my friend. Hope things are well. But yeah, nobody should be surprised, least of all Russell Wilson or anybody like that who, I mean, who's going to get offended other than Russell Wilson that you say, hey, we could be looking at a quarterback in 24? No one. Wait, if anybody's going to be offended, it's like, wait a minute. Why are you waiting so long? 2024. What about next year? That would be the only negative reaction you would get from most of Bronco country.
And it really does align with what we've been talking about on here for a bit. The way the Russell Wilson contract sets up, I know there's kind of a movement for people to move on from him this year. Everything I've told is that financially that's not a viable option, but they could move on from him with that post June 1st cut after next season, which voids, I think it's $38 million guaranteed on that 2025 salary. So if they can't wait a year, otherwise you have a massive salary that goes guaranteed the following year. So
one more year for sure. One more year for sure. Even if it's you put them in, and they joked about this. This came in as a super last week as a joke about, put them on the what is it? I said the non-football injury list. The PNP. What's the word in the morning? That physically unable to perform. The pup list, because he's physically unable to perform. I was like, I'm serious about this. Put him on the non-injury pup. That's what the Falcons did with Calvin Ridley. Yes, that's a possibility. Now, I don't think it's a realistic possibility because
that'd be ugly.
There's still something left in Russell Wilson. There is. Mm-hmm. He didn't just go from Pro Bowl in 2021 to, just a complete disaster in this year. I mixed up my years, 2021 to 2022. The drop off has been steep, but there is a bounce back in there. There's been a lot that isn't just Russell Wilson, isn't just Nathaniel Hackett, isn't just the offensive line, isn't just the injuries. It's a combination of all of those things. And if you can start fixing some of those, maybe some that were at the bottom, injuries get better, your offensive line gets better, your head coach gets better, Russell Wilson should get better. You're not going to just mothball him, but that would be the option. That's the nuclear option in 2023. Is you shelve him. Maybe you play with a 52-man roster, and he's a healthy scratch every single week, but it's only like a $22 million cap hit as opposed to a $90 million dead cap hit. You're not waiving the guy this year. You might stick him in the corner. In football and soccer, they have the guys go off and practice with the reserves. It's like you're going to go practice with the practice squad. That's what they do with guys who are, their contract's coming up or they've been a problem. They go practice with the reserves and they're basically forgotten about. Mm-hmm. That's what you do with Russell Wilson next year if he's completely unsalvageable, which I don't believe.
And you talk about mothballing him. That wouldn't happen to start the season, but maybe, halfway through he's still playing bad. Then you might mothball him then because he does have injury guarantees on the contract for 2024.
We've seen twice already this year.
Yep. I mean,
we saw it with the Colts and Matt Ryan, mm-hmm. and we just saw it yesterday with
Derek
Carr, who will be wearing a different uniform next year, unless Josh McDaniel gets fired and the new guy comes in, doesn't want to save $28 million on Derek Carr's contract. Derek Carr will not be a Raider, and they won't play him the rest of the year in case, to prevent injury. So very, very similar.
Yeah, really interesting. So just real quick, putting a bow on this, the names that Mike Kliss tweeted out here. Caleb Williams, I mean, if you haven't heard of Caleb Williams by now, you're probably living under a rock. The Heisman winner.
You're watching this show, you've heard of Caleb Williams.
Yeah, 100%. Caleb Williams, though, he'd be number one overall in this class if he came out. Drake May last night had he was not the most efficient performance by him, but you watch it and that's like, oh, that's a high-end NFL throw. Oh, that's a high-end NFL throw. That he's running now around. I mean, redshirt freshman, 6'4", 230. I mean, he's really a great quarterback. He might be number one overall if he was out this year. You got Quinn Ewers at Texas, who plays Michael Penix and Washington tonight, and Quinn Ewers was considered a very highly rated quarterback prospect out there at Texas. Got a great arm. This list lists Shedeur Sanders, who's the former Jackson State quarterback who's transferring to Colorado. I know there's some Buffs fans in here. I watched some Sanders. I don't see it with him as far as being a first-round caliber quarterback, but I've been wrong before. Bo Nix listed here. Jaden Daniels for LSU listed here. Tyler Van Dyke listed here. I don't think any of those guys are first rounders per se, but you might talk me into day two. The one name that's missing here that I think we should probably keep an eye on is Michigan's JJ McCarthy. They haven't thrown the ball very much at Michigan this year, but he's got a live arm. and he is very athletic. There was a play last year in the Big Ten championship where he outran the running back from Michigan to go make a block on a safety and hauled him out. And I mean, he's just a great athlete. We saw in the Ohio State game, he's got a down the field arm. Keep an eye on JJ McCarthy as well for 2024.
And I'm gonna hit on this one real quick, Colin, because it's for Colin talking about the whole concept of elite quarterback is changing though, and Russ is going against the wind because quarterbacks need to have running ability. The first need of a quarterback has to do with their arm, their right or left arm. That's the need. The problem is, and I'll say this until my face turns completely blue and my eyes bug out, is the guys that you typically think of with the elite arms that don't have the running mobility, they're playing baseball. They're just not around anymore. They're not. How many guys have you seen out there, Nick, where you go, he's got an absolute rocket for an arm, does everything well, that you see in the college game anymore? Rocket for an arm, but he's kind of a statue in the pocket, but he can do everything. He reminds me of a throwback guy. Those guys are playing baseball, man. They don't exist anymore.
So I can think of one, but he sucked in the NFL because he could not move. And that is Jacob Eason, who had an incredible arm, 6'6", couldn't move.
Jacob Eason, who transferred out of Georgia because he couldn't win the starting job in college. So maybe he wasn't all that.
No, he wasn't all that, but he did have an amazing arm. He just was.
I'm just saying, but has everything but feet.
Yeah,
has everything except the mobility. Those guys are making $300 million or trying to chase that $300 million in baseball. So they don't need to have running ability. It's just the guys that have the world-class arms that aren't necessarily great runners, they're playing baseball, man. I've been saying that for 15 years and I'm still not wrong.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons the game has changed, just because there's 15 professional baseball players on each team. Times 30, there's 500 jobs. Round out. By the time you DL guy, there's 500 major league jobs with a better standard of less danger, quality of afterlife, more guaranteed money. It's just a more sure thing.
Yep.
Baseball has done more to hurt the throwing quarterback than mobile quarterbacks have.
And you guys heard it here. Baseball players go to heaven. They have a better afterlife, and football players straight to hell.
It's
from
tough.
Scott.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I mean,
all
the NFL guys I know, their kids all play baseball and basketball.
You just said afterlife, so I just wanted to give you a hard time there. But coming in, we got Red John. Anyone got any bacon this morning? No bacon for me just yet, but if you cook some up for me, I'll definitely oblige. We're more of a turkey bacon house. The wife likes turkey bacon, and I'm not really that picky. Although when I'm back in Iowa, a good slab of fresh bacon, oh man, it's the best. More pigs than people in the state of Iowa. Jeremy Sean coming in and saying, "Morning, boys. Hope everyone had a good Christmas. It was a very good Christmas. Hopefully got some good presents soon from Mr. Penner. Sounds like he's willing to, you see those spoiled kids who don't get everything they want and it's expensive. He's going to be opening the checkbook and making sure that Broncos country, at least, maybe we don't get what we want, but it's going to be a highly valuable paid asset that's brought in." And talking about highly paid assets, Jetty Splash coming in $5 saying, "Any chance Russell Wilson will forfeit some of his salary to rebuild? I believe Elway would have. It's the old school Denver culture. I don't see it happening. I think that he's got this massive contract. He's about that money. I guess you're paid what somebody's willing to pay you. So he's earned that money. It seems pretty inconceivable. Now, if things were going well in Denver and we needed a little bit of cash, let's say, an extra $3 million to go sign a left tackle or a better running back for him, I think that's a possibility. But giving back Russell Wilson forfeiting some money in this case is the ability to move on from him. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, let's flash back here just a little bit, okay? First of all, forfeit, no. When guys create more room internally, it just means they maybe take a little bit more money up front or they push the money towards the back. You usually have leverage with those guys, meaning you can waive them. You don't have leverage to cut Russell Wilson right now because of his dead cap hit. You don't want to extend him right now because you basically want to get out from this contract as soon as possible. So those are the two that would be able to leverage. And if you're going to do that, you do that on the front end. And let's remember, does anybody remember? This seems like a long, long time ago. The heat Russell Wilson took for giving a league-friendly, team-friendly, he's a corporate guy because he didn't get as much money guaranteed as he could have. Do y'all remember that? I do.
Mhm.
You remember how he was getting ran through the ground by the national media about him hurting other players because he didn't get enough for himself? So, in essence, he already did give some of that money back to the Denver Broncos when he signed his initial contract. As crazy as that sounds now, unfortunately, this Irishman has a really, really good memory when it comes to that kind of stuff.
I mean, it's definitely true, and I think it was
Keeping the receipts, Nick.
yeah. And I guess the Broncos, we can say this is bad. They dodged a bullet not going with the Deshaun Watson 100% guaranteed contract. And man, Deshaun Watson's looked pretty damn terrible for the Browns as well. Maybe it's not.
He hadn't played in 18 months.
That's true, but
I mean, remember Michael Vick when he came out of of a 2-year sabbatical? He
yeah,
wasn't. It took him a year.
yeah,
How about Michael Jordan? Maybe the greatest ever.
yeah,
It's not easy. This game is not easy, despite the fact that some make it look like that.
yeah. The margins are very thin, but still, Broncos have a little bit more leeway than the Browns, and didn't sell their soul for that one. We got Lewis Condon coming in saying Bo Nix and Caleb Williams are someone like Ohio State C.J. Stroud. So C.J. Stroud is going to be out in this draft class. I'm guessing he's going to go in the top 18 picks in this draft. He struggles some under pressure, not a dynamic athlete by any means, and can be kind of somewhat erratic. Sometimes he throws like the most beautiful touch pass that any quarterback in this class can make, and other times I don't know what he's looking at. So he'll go early. I see a lot of Jared Goff with him, which is not a dig. Jared Goff's playing good football right now. And you get Jared Goff on a rookie contract, you can go to the playoffs with that kind of guy. But Bo Nix and Caleb Williams are for next year and CJ Stroud this year. Broncos might go after a quarterback in the draft this year. I'm highly skeptical it's the first round. You're probably talking about a guy that's coming out in, round 3 through round 5. And the big issue is that, and we've already kind of talked about some of these guys, but because of NIL, a lot of the quarterbacks that were considered to be interesting prospects that could go, day 2 through early day 3, they're going back to college. They're going
As
back
they
for
should.
NIL.
As they absolutely should nowadays. Now that things are getting fair, it used to drive me crazy when you get some of these kids that were marginal NFL guys, but were broke as can be. They're like, I'm going to the NFL, and they wouldn't get drafted.
Yep.
It's like, guys, this system is so broken. Stay in school. And they can't necessarily afford to stay in school.
Yeah.
Because of their home situation, and they're trying to come out and be a 6th-round draft pick. I saw it a zillion times. So, the one I meant to say this last night, Nick, or the last time we were on, was what this reminds me a little bit of is a franchise tag. When I was talking about Anthony Richardson, so this was probably yesterday, Anthony Richardson probably could make more money staying one more year at Florida in one season, kind of like being on a franchise tag, but he would give up a longer term deal with a guaranteed contract that would pay him 4x what 1 year of college would. So I understand that. That's a very similar. My list on this, Lewis, though, if we're ranking him, as Caleb Williams is a 1. He's a bona fide number 1 overall. CJ Stroud, I still think, is a top 15 guy, and Bo Nix, I say it all the time. We're all biased. I went to Auburn. I watched Bo Nix. Not for me in anything above the 3rd, man. Not right now. So
Yeah.
You want to talk about a guy that can run but can't throw? There you go. I mean, I'm not saying he can't throw. I'm exaggerating.
Yeah.
But the number one, what you need to have in this league to play to play NFL football is the arm. And he hadn't proved that he could be accurate enough, calm enough, poised enough, any of those other things. But hey, he's a great athlete.
And he improved this season. I'm glad that he's
stars. Apologies.
Yeah. Oh yeah, thank you so much. Bo Nix did improve this year, though. It'll be fun to watch him next season at Oregon. Lord knows they're going to be able to pay to get guys around him with that Phil Knight money. Let's say hello to some people. Kevin Gray coming in saying, "Morning Broncos country, Nick and Scott. I really like Harbaugh. I'll kick back and listen to the country. Denver Broncos for life, MHH for life." Harbaugh, yeah, it seems like the Broncos are definitely going to go after Jim Harbaugh. That seems to be their number 1 guy. But the question isn't if the Broncos are interested. The question is if Harbaugh is interested. And I think there's only like a $3 million buyout for the Broncos to go get him, which is nothing. Compared. I think Deion Sanders' buyout is like $15 million or something. Other coaches at $3 million is really small for Harbaugh. Maybe they think that there's no way he would leave because he's a Michigan man, but he's had multiple interviews at the NFL side. I do believe there is some language in his contract where he can get a lot more money leaving Michigan next cycle, not this cycle. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But I think it's like almost like 30 million or something, like a difference of that, which is substantial.
It's a lot, but I mean, he's rich.
He's rich.
You,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, when you're making 10 million a year, it's where he is, and you're about to get a contract offer between 15 and 20 to come in the NFL or something like that. It becomes about, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
What do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do with your life? We'll throw it back to Twisted Sister here. There's a throwback for Jeremy and Ethan if he's on.
I saw them live. It was a good show.
It was but what do you want to do? He's got more money than he's ever going to need. It's almost like people are like, money talks. This is, the Penners will get whoever they want to because, money talks. There's a certain amount where, rich is rich, man. At 15, 20, 25, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? Where do you want to coach? What's the best situation for you? Money doesn't really become a factor anymore, because there's more money that's beyond everybody's wildest dreams. So him coming out, him saying, okay, one more year and I could get 30 isn't necessarily the factor for me. It's, where do you want to be? Do you still want to deal with all these 20-year-old, 17-year-old kids and their parents and their handlers and 85 scholarships plus the other 85 you're talking to in the transfer portals, and what a headache that is? Or do you want to go coach football in the NFL and get paid 8 figures for it a year, get a 9-figure contract, and be able to coach football in the biggest, most popular league in the world for that isn't international football, well, at least in the US? Do you want to do that? Because you were successful doing this before at San Francisco. Do you want to do that or not? That's what it will boil down to for me, Nick.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's his choice. The ball's in his court. They're going to make a press on him, and we'll see if it happens. Jetty Splash, good morning. Good to see you, Jetty. He says, I will try and not tilt this morning. Yeah, Jetty's been on a tilt. We appreciate you, Jetty. It's frustrating times in Broncos country, no doubt. We got Richard coming in saying, hope you all had a nice Christmas in spite of the game. Absolutely did. It was such a punched out so early. It kind of felt like the Super Bowl against the Seahawks, whatever year it was, where we're down like a lot just so fast. It's like, well, now I can sit back and not care and just watch it happen. So is what it is. Mike Givens, good morning, Nick and Scott. Good to see you. Miguel coming in. Good morning, fellas. Good to see you, Miguel. Always appreciate you. Dom, good morning, Nick and Scott in Broncos country. Finally get to see my dogs on Saturday, and my mother-in-law's birthday is on New Year's Eve as well, Scott. Have a great weekend, guys.
Are we brothers?
Dom and Scott. I mean, it's gotta be same last name. You guys probably look the same. No, see you next year as well, Dom. Yeah, we'll talk, I'm sure. We got Greg. Greg, you didn't hit us up on Twitter, but that's okay. Hope you're doing well. If you do hit us up on Twitter, then let us know. We can tweet out the GoFundMe and talking about Greg's recent passing of his mother.
Speaking of mothers.
Yeah, tough time, especially this time of year, but obviously never easy. But thinking about you, Greg, was looking for you last night as well to give you a shout out, but glad to have you here this morning.
We want to transition to this one, Nick, just kind of talking about the title. Want to get into it a little bit because there's been some Sean Payton questions in here. There was one that started off with, does Sean Payton make sense and Peyton Manning as quarterback coach? The first part makes sense. The second, no. The second's not going to happen. Peyton Manning, I don't see him ever really, at least in this stage of his life, maybe when he gets a little older, when he's had some fun, he's having fun right now. Getting into the admin side of things other than a special advisor. He can make all the money in the world right now having fun. Remember, getting back to what I said about the money doesn't become a deciding factor at a certain level. Peyton Manning's not doing anything for the money right now. He's doing it because he wants to. He's rich. He's wealthy, as Shaq once, or as Chris Rock, I think, once described the difference. He's wealthy. So Peyton Manning's not going to come be a quarterback coach. Could he be a special advisor to a general manager or a consultant to the Walton Penner? Yeah, he could do that. But I don't think he's in for the grind. Now, John asks, do you think Sean Payton is really set as Fangio as his defensive coordinator? I'd like to see Evero stay with the next staff. I don't think Sean Payton's going to make a 9-figure decision, which is that what we could be talking about. He could get an 8-year, $100 million contract for somebody, and that's not unreasonable. A 9-figure contract based on Vic Fangio. Don't think that's happening. So he'll put feelers out there. I'm sure he's got some other options in mind on who he would want as his defensive coordinator. that he's not going to hitch his wagon to Vic Fangio. It's the other way around, y'all. It's the other way around.
And there has been reports of Sean Payton already having a staff together of what he would like to have, and if he had to pivot, he would. Maybe Fangio would come back. I think it's probably too fresh from Fangio being here with the weird dynamic that caused some weird dynamics in the locker room. But yeah, the Broncos are gonna. At least I might as well get into it. According to ESPN insider and reporter Jeremy Fowler, he has an article on ESPN Plus, but is also able to find a lot of it from Bleacher Report. And the quote from Jeremy Fowler says, people around the NFL are expecting the Broncos to at least check on Sean Payton's interest in the job and possibly make a major run at him. There's obviously been reports that Sean Payton is very interested in either Los Angeles gig that could open up. He's also interested in the Dallas Cowboys gig. And Josina Anderson also points out the Arizona Cardinals potentially being a spot as well. Arizona Cardinals, they're also in a world of suck down out there in Arizona. They're terrible. They're devoid of more talent than the Broncos roster. They're also tied to a quarterback who's not falling off a cliff like Russell Wilson, but he might not even play next year. And he's got a very specific style of football that he has to play as well. So Arizona's, I wouldn't say a very ideal spot, and Broncos can definitely outpay Arizona. I guess they do have their first round pick, which is a big difference between the two spots. But the LA spots, Dallas,
a high first
and
round pick.
Yeah, it's going to be top 4 for sure. So we'll see unless they beat the Falcons, which you might be pulling for, Scott. But will be interesting to see. And the Broncos going after Sean Payton. I think it's an interesting one because rumors so far have been Sean Payton doesn't have much interest in coming to Denver. It seemed like everything was pointing towards Sean Payton going to the Chargers. And now the Chargers are on a heater, making the playoffs, and could finish with 10, 11 wins on a team that's been pretty injured this season.
Mm-hmm. That ends up being a pretty good job when you're talking about the injuries that a pretty good job done. We know that any NFL job for the most part is a good job, relatively speaking. Yeah. There's tiers. But I think Staley's done a good job with that team. They could finish 11-6 and make the playoffs. He ain't going anywhere. You're not going to fire a guy that went 11-6 and finish strongly unless they get blown out in the first round of the playoffs and you need an excuse. That's possible. Miguel comes in. He says, I think Evero stays if Jim Harbaugh is head coach, being that he worked under him in San Francisco. That's good. That is a good tie. It could also mean that he has no chance working for him, being that he worked for him in San Francisco. You never know. Harbaugh hasn't always been the most liked guy around, but again, you're not looking for friends at this point. Y'all have heard me say before, I don't mind an a-hole. I can't stand a hypocrite. I like Nick Saban. He is a cutthroat mercenary. I don't want to go play golf with him. I don't want to have, I wouldn't mind having lunch with him, but you know what I mean? I don't want to go out and be buddy with him, but by God, I wouldn't mind him coaching my football team. We don't need to be friends if you're doing a good job. But he might be tough to work for. The only one I ever knew that could work for more than 1 year under Nick Saban in his 50s and 60s, he's 70-something now, was Kirby Smart. Kirby was the only one that lasted multiple years under Nick Saban.
Yeah. Nick Saban can be a little bit of a hypocrite when it comes to the Alabama program not making the playoffs or not, because it's crazy how, he's
that's typical.
That's politicking.
It was the Bobby Bowden type that I just couldn't stand, where his players are running amok of the law and he's, oh, by golly, gee, Willie, boys will be boys. While it's just that the Urban Meyer, we're going to do it cleaner and better and everybody than 100%. And meanwhile, his players are running afoul of the law. It's just, that's a hypocrite. Those were the ones I didn't like, where Steve Spurrier was a jerk and I loved him for it. Loved him. Nick Saban's not trying to be anybody's friend with that. That's what I mean by that type. But getting back to Payton, he's going to answer the phone. If the Walton Penner group calls from the Denver Broncos, your foot's in the door. You're gonna get your chance to make your case and make your appeal. And as they've gone through it, as Greg Penner was going through, why this is going to be an attractive job, because it's the Denver Broncos. I don't have to tell you all who the Denver Broncos are and why that is a good job. And you've got invested unlimited wealth in order to do what you want to do to build this. Right now, your team isn't where you want to be, and you've got a contract that's hampering you. But if I'm looking at this as a 1-year deal, but if I'm looking at this as, hey, where do I want to spend the last 10 years of my career before I retire? Okay. 2 years out of 10 is just a blip. When you get into your late 40s, and I'm not 50 yet, you can hold your breath for a year. A year goes by quickly. It might not seem like it right now to y'all, but a year goes by quick. And then you're turning things over and going again.
Yep. It does fly by. It feels like these years post Peyton Manning have all just run by really quickly. It's been 7 years now. God. Michael coming in saying, good morning, Nick and Scott and Broncos for breakfast. Good to see you, Michael. We appreciate you coming in. We also got our guy Kaylee on. Yo, how you doing, Kaylee on? Hope you had a good holiday out there. We also got GTO. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I want to say hi to David real quick also,
Yeah.
who comes in. Good morning, David. Appreciate the support. Coming in with the blue super. He says, is Harbaugh a real option? As real as anybody at this point. You know, we're spitballing names. Again, like I just said, David, if the Denver Broncos call, you're going to answer. You're going to take the call. Can I make you an offer you can't refuse? Maybe. With Harbaugh, like I said at the beginning, David, if you weren't here, it's going to come down to how do you enjoy spending your time? Maybe I want to be a Michigan man and deal with all the personnel decisions and the recruiting that's going on. That can be fun. Some guys dig that. The Dr. Frankenstein types who just want to live and breathe football, the guys who are like life coordinators, offensive and defensive coordinators, they don't want to deal with that BS. They just want to do football. What do you want to do? I don't know the answer for that for Jim Harbaugh. I don't. If he wants to focus on being a football coach in the world's biggest league, then he'll go to the NFL, which has been an option for him the past couple of seasons. Now what happens when $100 billion comes knocking on the door? You answer.
Yeah. GTO 69 comes in and says, this is in the Broncos assigned Tim Tebow with $1 billion contract over the next 10 years. Turn off the Xbox. Make sure you unplug it and plug it back in there, GTO. We appreciate you coming in. DeAndre saying, Russ is mobile, but we need a head coach that will bring out the best and get the best out of Russ and hold him accountable. I really don't know if Russell Wilson is mobile anymore. And I talked about it last night on Mile High Insiders. You know, a lot of people saying, the hamstring injury, the lat injury, he lost a lot of mobility after that. I went back and, looked at some notes and listened to some talking heads after week 1 in the Seattle game. And even in that one, when Russell Wilson was as healthy as he's been all season, the alarm bells were ringing. Wow, Russell Wilson is not running like he used to. Wow, look at the defensive lineman closing ground on him. We hadn't seen that before. It used to be that he was running stride for stride with linebackers, and now he's lost a lot of quickness, a lot of twitch, a lot of speed even. So I don't know if he is necessarily mobile anymore, and that's a concern. I think it's one reason that Russell Wilson, rumored, has really wanted to change his play style to be more within pocket, within structure, and has had an affinity for Drew Brees' play style. The issue is Drew Brees was absolutely incredible. One of the best quarterbacks of all time in the quick pass game as far as anticipation, putting the ball in a spot where the pass catcher can do the most after the catch, just reading the defense, all things that Russell Wilson has struggled with, not only this last year in Denver, but in his career. Is he going to change who he is overnight? He's got to get better there, no doubt. But I think he kind of is who he is at this point, which is a quarterback who lives on down the field passing, who's lost some ability to create out of structure.
I know I'm looking for it, Nick, but it seems like the Broncos, for the 2 years that I've been covering this team, hit more guys with 2 feet planted on the ground than anybody else in the world. Yeah. When we talk about run after the catch, you hit a guy in stride, he's already moving. Not hit a guy on a button hook or a quick out and he has to change directions or get going. Hit a guy on a slant, a drag, a cross, something, swing pass, a circle route where you hit him in stride where he's already moving. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen very often. So that's part of it also when you talk about yards after the catch. A couple of comments in here I wanted to highlight that I like. Travis comes in. We hit on this earlier, Travis, so I think you joined us a little late. But that's okay because our numbers actually rise as we go, and we can hit on this again real quick. He says that Peyton's put his staff together and having Fangio as the DC, would Denver really be an option? Nothing set in stone, Travis, and Sean Payton would the next Denver Broncos head coach could get $100 million contract. That's just the finances of the NFL these days. you're not going to make $100 million decision based on Vic Fangio. So I wouldn't worry about that. It's like, hey, listen, sorry, Vic. I know we had talked about this, but I'm going to Denver, and it's not really an option. They've already got a defensive coordinator I like. So that isn't going to be a deal breaker. And Silent One comes in. I like this comment too. Says the truth is that we aren't a coach away, just like we weren't a quarterback away. However, the coach that would bring the biggest change is Harbaugh, because he'll get rid of our horrible front office. And one of the questions was, who says he's going to get the power to do that? And I don't think you'll have some say in it, but you're not going to come in and just clean house on something like it. If anybody's going to do that, it's going to be Greg Penner, and do it with who we want. We might do it together. But on this, where it says the truth is that we aren't a coach away, just like we weren't a quarterback away, not from a Super Bowl, not from a Super Bowl. No, you're right. Mm-hmm. But from becoming relevant and competent again, a coach will help. A coach will help. There's no reason this roster should be under 500. So you should see an immediate bounce next year from your style of play, the quality of play next season. You should.
Yeah. And we can go on and on about how this team is so bad. We've talked about the injuries. You'd expect, God, I hate saying this so many years in a row, you'd expect injuries to regress more to the norm. You cannot continually be one of the most injured teams in football, given we know data-driven that injuries are pretty random and from year to year. That's one that if you're down here one year, obviously it's the gambler's fallacy. It doesn't mean that your odds are better to be up here again, but it resets. Every single team's odds reset. So given you've been down on the bottom or at the top, I guess, of the injury rate, you would expect that you should be closer to the middle at least next year. We'll see if that comes to fruition. Obviously, the Broncos talked about the injuries and looking into that, so we'll see. And you got something to say?
It's random until it's not.
That's true.
Now we're in the I see a pattern territory here.
Yep.
When it comes to the injuries in the Denver Broncos, it's not random anymore.
It's the lack of oxygen.
We have a full pattern developing. We're not talking about one-score games where you go 7-2 one year and then it regresses back to 2-7 the next year. We're talking about 6 straight years. If I got 6 straight years of a guy going 2-7 in one-score games, I need a new coach.
Yep.
If I've got 6 straight years of being one of the most injured teams in the league, despite 4 different coaching staffs with 4 different philosophies, there's a constant in there. One of them is you're in Denver, the altitude. Altitude doesn't tear ACLs. No. Altitude doesn't tear pectorals. Altitude doesn't it can contribute to hamstrings. It can.
I was going to say the hamstrings, the soft tissue injuries.
But there's so much more going on with this team than just hamstrings. It's something's going to change. I said that about halfway through the season when you start hearing state media, and yes, I will say it, Nick, start bringing those questions up. It's because someone has asked them to bring those questions up when it's been off topic. You haven't been allowed to ask that. It's been completely taboo for years. Now you're allowed to all of a sudden question all the injuries. Something's changing, without a doubt. What I love staying the same is Rello Country coming in here. He says Broncos should get David Shaw. What has David Shaw been doing since he took over in Stanford? I honestly don't know.
He had some good years there, but Stanford is just such a terrible school in the NIL landscape for college football. They don't really have a strong alumnus base with football fandom. So that's a team that is on the downward trend there. And Stanford's, they just don't recruit at all. They're not very good anymore. I think he's still probably a pretty good football coach. I'm not interested in him as a head coach, but he has connections to Jim Harbaugh. Maybe you bring him in the Jim Harbaugh staff if you sign him. But David Shaw is definitely a name that if the Broncos do bring him in, it'll feel a little bit of a letdown. And I'd have to do some more research on it. I know he's a pretty respected coach, but just the recent trend with Stanford, not all on him, because we talk about it's a Jimmy's and Joe's, not an X's and O's thing. That's even more true for college football. And you can see the disparity there compared to the NFL. But probably lower on the list for me. But is answer to this one, who's a dark horse head coach for the Broncos? Joey Grubbs asks. David Shaw is definitely a dark horse one. Him and Jim Caldwell are two that stand out to me.
And I want to follow up with Rello. He says Andrew Luck, Christian McCaffrey, Zach Ertz, and David DeCastro are among the players who went on to Pro Bowl careers after developing under Shaw. One it's been so long and the years start mixing together for me so much. I feel like at least one of those guys, specifically the 5-star quarterback out of Texas that went to Stanford, was a Jim Harbaugh recruit. I could be wrong.
I think DeCastro was as well.
I could be wrong. But two, each one of those guys you mentioned were very, very highly recruited. I don't want to hear about developing. Stanford was recruiting at a level that was putting them in the top 10 for a few years there. And it started under Jim Harbaugh. David Shaw did a good job. But I remember each one of those. Andrew Luck was 5 stars. When does Stanford get a 5-star quarterback?
Tanner McKee wasn't he?
Not real life. Who was?
The one that's coming out this year wasn't very good. He was in the same draft class as Fields and Trevor Lawrence.
Well, I was in charge when Andrew Luck was a 5-star.
Yeah.
And Christian McCaffrey, I was in charge when these guys were coming out. Zach Ertz and David DeCastro. I was in charge of the rankings on that. And I had a great staff of guys in the West Coast. And basically, I just had to slot guys in different areas and sometimes make the decisions. Should this guy be a 5 or this guy be a 4? But I had a tremendous group of scouts that I worked with at scout.com and identified all of these guys early and often as big time prospects, including Andrew Luck, who was a 5-star going to Stanford. But yeah, I don't know what David Shaw has been doing since Stanford. That's kind of a random name for me.
Yeah. There's been some linkage there. Obviously, the Broncos have some Stanford connections, so we'll see. We got Travis coming in saying, happy heavenly birthday to Broncos brother Armin. Yeah, the shout out to Armin. Died tragically in a car accident years and years ago. So didn't know it was his birthday today, but happy birthday to him, and thanks for the shout out there, Travis. Also, we got Juan coming in here. Juan Espinoza, frequent flyer on the Broncos for Breakfast channel over on Facebook. Says, good morning, gentlemen. Do you believe Denver goes with the first-time coach again? And if they do, what are your thoughts? I am outwardly of the opinion that I don't give a flying bag of you-know-what if it's a first-time head coach or a second-time head coach. You go through the list of head coaches that are succeeding this year, and it's nearly almost 50-50 as far as first-time head coach succeeding or second-time head coach succeeding. And some people are like, well, it's not really fair to call Mike Tomlin a first-time head coach. Well, he was so good the first time he hired around. He's been there the whole time. It's just what other category are you going to put him in? I don't really care if it's the first time or second time. As long as you get in a good person, don't care if it's offense or defense, as long as it's a good person. The one thing that makes this a little bit more difficult is the Russell Wilson locker room dynamic and power dynamic right now. Maybe you have a little bit more ability to take back some power in that room if you have somebody like a big time coach like Sean Payton or Jim Harbaugh. But I think going into this and saying we must bring in somebody who's been a head coach prior limits your pool, limits your options, limits the ideas that are going to be pitched to you. That I don't think that's a way to do that. You can prefer a second time head coach with experience, but it cannot be a must have previous head coaching experience. For me personally, I think that's a terrible process for hiring a coach.
Best man for the job. I told you that's what they were going to say. You know, it doesn't necessarily have they might have it in their mind, but they're not going to say it. What do we prefer is get the right guy, and I don't know who that is right now. And Silent One has an interesting comment coming in here talking about. You watched a video about a medical study going right now about the frequency of sports injuries and longer recovery times compared to 20 years ago due to marijuana use. That would be an interesting study. If someone were to ask me about that, I would say what else has happened in the last 20 years is the hyper-specialization of sports. Mm-hmm. It's year-round, and there's very little recovery time, period, for the body to recover from the stresses and strains that you put through. Football players are playing football 12 months a year with the 7-on-7s and those type of things. Quarterbacks are throwing all the time. They're more ready to play right away. You see the defensive backs, receivers, the skill players, they're more ready to play when they arrive at the next level because they've been playing for 12 months. But if you want to ask me about the frequency of sports injuries, the hyper-specialization of the last 20 years becomes a problem as well.
Yeah, and also these guys are packing on muscle in areas that we haven't seen in the prior 20 years because not only the hyper-specialization in sports, but the body type building that you have.
And what doesn't keep up? Ligaments and tendons and bones.
Yeah, I mean those.
Okay, so I can add an extra 20 pounds, but there's no working out the ligaments and getting the same. And the same thing goes for the brain injuries. Mm-hmm. Okay, you can change the helmet a little bit, but the concussions, instead of a 220-pound linebacker running a 4.6, I've got a 220-pound safety running in the 4.3s, and the collisions are more violent. So all of that contributes to it. And the brain hasn't, the things that you can't train up are the bones, which surrounds your brain for the concussions, and the ligaments and tendons that are tearing more frequently because there's more stress being put on them. But again, that's getting super into the weeds at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. We got Holy Diver coming in saying Nick without his Christmas sweater. Christmas is over. It's out there for December and then it gets put away. I can put it back on for you for a low price of a $3 super chat. But Scott's got his mug out here. Holy Diver also says, but could Carr go to Denver as a backup and potentially starter over Wilson and drive Broncos to get back at the Raiders? I don't see Carr going to Denver. I can't see the Broncos allocating the funds to bring in a David Carr. He's going to have a pretty solid market out there. The type of quarterbacks that you're talking about for the Broncos here, and Scott might have to earmuffs this one or mute himself so he doesn't sigh. But like the likes of maybe an Andy Dalton, the likes of Jacoby Brissett, that's one that I think makes a lot of sense for the Broncos.
Marcus
Mariota, maybe.
He was a serviceable starter. He wasn't great, but he was a serviceable starter. But yeah, that's what you're looking at. And we can't afford David Carr. I grew up with I had his brother first, so it's Derek Carr.
I think it's Derek. Yeah.
David's his older brother.
Yeah.
Derek will not play on his $35 million contract next year. He'll get away from that, so he won't be that expensive. He'll be a free agent.
He'll still be expensive,
but he will have a decent market, and he will make $10+ million as a free agent quarterback. New York Jets make a lot of sense.
Indianapolis Colts. There's going to be some team at the top of this draft class that really wants a quarterback that doesn't get the guy they want. Carolina could. I know they don't have a lot of cap space, but they could probably work something out to bring him in. The Colts are a team that's going to be after a quarterback, so we'll see. I mean, heck, Arizona has to go without a quarterback next year. They're going to have a new head coach coming in. Maybe that's a team. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out there in the desert. And we also got DeAndre Weatherspoon saying no college coaches for me. The thing about Jim Harbaugh that makes him not a straight up college coach is that he had immense success with the 49ers. They did what? In the 5 years he was there, they went to 3 NFC championships, and that's with Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick. It's not like he's on the coattails of Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning. Now, he did it with multiple quarterbacks, and every single place he's gone, the teams have been somewhat similar. The style, the identity that they build looks similar. So you're getting, I think, a formula that works in any league.
He runs a pro style. He took his NFL style and took it to Michigan. I mean, he
tried a little spread first. Didn't work.
This a little bit becomes more about David Shaw, on that. And I agree. It is such a different. You saw the guys that didn't have success and bolted right away. Frankly, who has had success in Washington? When you talk about Steve Spurrier, Steve Spurrier is a genius. But Nick Saban, guys like that, they're used to being in charge of every single detail and having control over everything. You don't want to play? Fine, we'll cut you. You can't do that in the NFL. The players have equally, if not as much power as the head coach. That ain't going to fly with Nick Saban. Wasn't going to fly with Nick Saban and didn't. He got out. It doesn't mean he can't coach, but you don't want someone like that. And if I want a college coach, I want somebody who is innovative in one of maybe the lower. I say this all the time. Don't give me the offensive coordinator at LSU or Ohio State or Alabama, where they're out-talenting every single frickin' team they play. Let's go see who's tearing it up one level down. Is Bowling Green putting up a zillion yards of offense this year? Miami of Ohio, somebody like that, where the talent level is equal, and I'm literally out-scheming you. And in that case, I might hire you as an assistant and give you a path up where I agree, though, DeAndre, you might not be talking about first-time coaches, but by God, they better have NFL experience.
Yeah. And we got Jetty Splash coming in saying, Dalton, he always crashes and burned at the end of the season. You are bringing in that quarterback and a couple other names here for Scott's eye roll because he loves these two so much. Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. Those kind of guys.
Mayfield.
Yeah, it's Sam Darnold that you.
It's Sam Darnold is the one that just has blown my mind since San Clemente High School. When I went to go see them, I was like, eh. And then the USC hype train is the Southern California. I used to say either they don't know what the hell they're talking about or they're intentionally dishonest. which one is it? I don't like either one of them. But the hype train I saw, they brought in this offensive lineman that I was like, he's big. Brought him in from Ohio, so I saw him. They hadn't seen him before. Comes into practice, they're just raving about him. Oh, he's amazing, underrated this, underrated. I was like, oh, maybe I missed. I watched half of practice, like I didn't miss. Kid didn't play it down. They're just either you don't know what you're doing or you are intellectually dishonest. Pick one. Sam Darnold benefited from that hype train.
Luckily for us, we can both agree that the Caleb Williams hype train is real as far as the tape. Yeah, he did it at Oklahoma as well. But you're talking about quarterbacks here that are soft competing with Russell Wilson next season. And one thing, we can talk about Dalton being a lower level quarterback. I agree. He's not a long-term option at all. However, specifically, Jacoby Brissett and Andy Dalton, they are renowned as far as being locker room guys. Their teammates love them everywhere they've gone. The Saints players, outwardly spoken very highly about Andy Dalton. Jacoby Brissett, the job that he did coming into this Browns team and keeping them stable this year. It's not Jacoby Brissett's fault this Browns team is horrible this year. It's the 30 ranked defense that Cleveland's fielding this season, and the number 32 ranked run defense. So bringing him in, it's not a long-term option, but it's a protection in case Russell Wilson stinks. It's a stabilization factor in the locker room. And it's also protecting yourself from that injury guarantee if Russell Wilson is playing bad and you are moving on from him.
Well, and my question right now is, who are you expecting? Lamar Jackson?
No, you're stuck.
Right now your competition's not Russell Wilson. Your competition's Brett Rippon. You're looking to upgrade there.
Yep.
So don't roll your eyes at Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton's an improvement. Andy Dalton would improve your quarterback play right now.
He's better than your starter.
What I'm saying
this season. Yeah. Yeah. And it's
put it in the jar.
Yeah.
we don't have a swear jar on this show. We've got a giant sigh jar on this show. So every time you start talking about the state of the quarterback position and the options to fix it in the short term, and Nick just gave a big, put $1 in the side jar.
Yeah. Yep. It's, I'm tired. William come in and said, I don't think you can win the West with Andy Dalton. It's not about, unfortunately, that's not a winning the West. That is a trying to soft land. What was that?
Go get? You got Russell Wilson and you got someone to bring in. Who's it going to be? Oh, Rippon? Okay.
Yeah.
That's who you're competing with right now. So again, let's keep our expectations somewhere close to reality. Are you going to trade 3 first-round picks to get Lamar Jackson? That's not. It's not going to happen. Jimmy G is going to have a, Brissett or healthy Jimmy G. I don't know what Brissett's market will be. Jimmy G's market will put him into the 10+ million range.
Yeah. Yep. We're talking about Brissett and Dalton because they're not going to be very expensive, but you know what you're getting, very high floor. And again, I think bringing in somebody with a very strong locker room presence, I think will be very good for the Russell Wilson thing. However, that could breed some contempt in that room, if the players are rallying behind the backup and Russell Wilson's detached. It's a weird formula, but we're embracing the weird formula because it's going to have to be weird for how this Broncos team is shaping up in the future couple seasons. William coming in and saying, I think Maker has a higher ceiling. I think Mayfield does have a higher ceiling as well. They're going to bring in somebody. We're just throwing out names here. They're not going to go get the top tier free agent quarterback because they can't pay the top tier free agent quarterback. You're looking for the journeyman that can come in and stabilize the ship.
And a higher ceiling also means a bigger market. Again, so you don't want to try and get into a bidding war for Derek Carr. Derek Carr is going to get some money. Is he going to be available? Yeah. Is Mayfield available? Yeah. Will he be in the realm of what you're willing to spend to improve your quarterback room? So there you go. Mm-hmm. And Adam, you're killing me on this, dude. Russell's not going anywhere. Who's going to compete with him? Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just laughing at the state of the franchise right now. I don't think Rippon is better than Russ. Rippon is one of the worst backups, number 2s, and not 2 being forced up because of injuries in the league. Just is what it is. But definitely we'll see what happens there. And it comes back again, talking about the quarterback situation in Denver in 2023 and the reason that Mike Kliss tweeted out the 2024 draft class. Yeah, this is a bridge season next season. Everything is
start talking about who's going to come in to replace Russ next year. Hey, there you go. Ryan says bring Drew back. He's going to be a free agent. He'll be a free agent. 4-year deal. It's up. You compete with Seattle. Does Seattle want to bring him back as a backup to Geno? Geno's going to be a free agent too, for that matter. I would imagine that Seattle will make him a nice offer, but not necessarily a financially crippling type of offer. But Seattle's got 2 free agent quarterbacks coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, heck, they're doing some stadium improvements. Maybe they can put a little stage on the corner of the bench for Drew Lock to come out and rap "Put On For My City" by Young Jeezy, just to get the fans going there. If the Broncos aren't good next year, at least we can lead a sing-along. I don't think Drew Lock's coming back. But anyway, final thoughts here. We've talked a lot today. Man, so much information. We didn't even talk about the Chiefs. We got to get our Chiefs. Yeah, I know. Denver going to Kansas City. They have 17 players on the injury list. 30 players on IR this season. I don't even know what the line is. If it's anything over, or if it's anything under 14 points, I would hammer the over. I don't think this is going to be a close game. I think the Broncos are going to probably compete somewhat out there. I do like Rosberg. I did think his interview or his press conference yesterday was solid, but this is such a talent disadvantage team. And I think this Chiefs team is going to look to step on the throat, sweep the leg, whatever cliche you want to use, because of what happened in this last game. They took their foot off the gas and the Broncos came back, and they're probably going to be a little bit irritated about that. They're not going to let that happen. So I expect this one to be a blowout. I probably got this one. Let's go Kansas City 35, Denver Broncos 10.
What's the line? I know you've said 16. Is that what it really is?
I haven't looked. Last I saw
be that high.
Last I saw it was like 11 and a half.
Yeah, I got 12 and a half over on ESPN right now, so it won't be that high. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't touch this game. You don't know what to expect. You get the new manager bounce, is what they like to call it, where these guys feel freed up, playing for their jobs for next year, playing to put good tape up there. Kansas City is cruising, but they still need this game. So home game, I think it's going to be close for a while, and then Kansas City pulls away, mid coming out of the halftime. So think of it like maybe a low-scoring 13-6 at half, as long as you don't throw a bunch of interceptions to begin the game. And then they pull away a little bit, and maybe, 27-13. That'd be a 14-point game, somewhere in that neighborhood. But this one, as predictable as it feels, there's a wild card in there right now. So we'll see. But again, what we talked about at the Chiefs at the beginning is you're going into this with no expectations. This is as relaxed as you should ever feel. There's nothing to lose. Zero. Everybody stay healthy, and let's see some good play from young players.
I just don't know how the defense can hold in this one. Playing defense a lot of times is a mentally demanding spot. You have to be in the right position and process and run fit and everything, and good tackling for him. And we saw it last week. The tackling was horrible. The run fits were horrible. And that's not being all in there with your heart and your mind. And I'm curious if that's the case now. I mean, we talk about it, that team lost discipline last week, but then everybody came out today and put weight in or yesterday, I guess, and talked about how sad they were about losing Harbaugh. Even Randy Gregory mentioned one of the reasons that he was so
Hackett.
Frustrated.
We got Harbaugh on the brain.
Did I say Hackett? Okay.
You said Harbaugh, yeah.
Okay. One of the reasons that Randy Gregory lost his discipline is because, and people were upset, is because they knew that when their butts were getting kicked, that's it for Hackett. So I'm curious if you have rather than an emotional upswing on this one, an emotional letdown. I don't think the guys in the locker room view Hackett as the most displeasing, unpalatable person in Denver right now.
Go ahead and say it, Nick. Who do you think they think that is right now?
We can talk about what Shannon Sharp said yesterday. Pretty much screaming.
That could be it. Well, they should have played better. That's what we did hear them all say too, is, I heard it from Dalton Reisner, heard it from Russell Wilson. They basically all said, part of this is my fault. I should have played better, and they feel bad for it. So again, could they pack it in and get blown out? Yes. Could they rally and try and show that they're not as bad as everybody says? Yes. Could they just get beat because they're beat handily because they're not as good as the Chiefs? Yes. There's several wild cards in there once you've made a change like this. If you're playing it straight up, then the Chiefs win this by 14 points. But there's factors. Again, if you come out and Russell Wilson throws 2 interceptions on 2 of his first 3 interceptions, go blow snow or whatever, rake the yard. I've got leaves. I don't have a snow blower. I got a leaf blower.
Undecorate.
Do something. on nurse your hangover, whatever it takes on Sunday.
Yeah. So what did you have? You had the final. I have it 35-10.
I'll
Kansas
say
City.
27-13.
Okay.
Which would be
So we both
40
taken the over.
points on a 12.5. That's too close for me to talk about taking the which line. It's a 45, and I'm 5 under on the over/under. I'd still probably go under on this one because that's 35-10 is still right at the under. Yep. I'd still probably go under on this one.
Chiefs cover under. We'll see. Interesting stuff here. Jeremy Fowler, again, wrapping up the show. Jeremy Fowler saying that the Broncos are going to engage in interest with Sean Payton. All rumors to date had been that Sean Payton has no desire to come to Denver, but maybe things change now that the Chargers job seems to be out the window. The Cowboys are probably keeping Mike McCarthy because that is a very good Cowboys team playing great offense right now. Dak Prescott might be the best mental quarterback in football right now. I mean, did you see this last game? He went like 20 for 20 against zone coverage or something insane. I mean, that's
good for him.
Dak Prescott's playing football at a high level. The pick six, yeah, he's good. They could use another weapon, but I digress. 31-6 says Quentin Caldwell. Yep, that's probably about right.
That's the under. That's the under by 8. So again, the over/under on this one's 45. I like the under better than I like the line. I bet the money line on this one. I'm sure it's bet 10,000 to win $50, but I'd still put the money on the Chiefs.
Yeah, yep. That's probably going to be an ugly game. But yeah, wrapping up, Jeremy Fowler, linking Sean Payton to the Broncos. Everything to date had been that the Broncos might have interest, but Sean Payton would have none. Now that the landscape has somewhat changed, specifically in regards to the Chargers spot, we'll see what happens. Personally, for me, I would rather go get Jim Harbaugh than Sean Payton. I think Jim Harbaugh's built up multiple programs with an identity. I don't know if I like Sean Payton's identity so much, and his success has been more tied to a Hall of Fame level quarterback than not, which scares me. And the big kicker for me, you don't have to give up anything but money for Jim Harbaugh. You probably have to give up your first round pick this year to bring in Sean Payton, which this is a team that needs talent.
Yeah, not a guarantee, but someone asked, it may have been Colin or Chase. I think it was Chase asked, you don't have to. You can offer other than draft picks to get Payton from the Saints, right? Yeah, you don't actually have to offer anything. They could just say go. That's not going to happen, but there's not a guarantee. They just own the rights to his contract. It ends up being more like international football. I need to buy the rights for his contract and then sign it, and then he needs to agree to a contract. So there's 3 parties involved where I've got to convince the Saints to let him go. Then so we have to come together. That's 2 parties, and then the third party is then convincing the coach to come. So that's how international football works, which I said is always kind of fun to follow from a general manager standpoint. But I honestly think Payton gets a lot of his, and I know for me, again, one of the reasons he is seen as not just a Drew Brees guy is because when Jameis Winston came in, and that's a small sample size, so that's risky. Mm-hmm. When Jameis Winston came in and played for 6 games, he was playing at the highest level of his career under Sean Payton. So you've seen Teddy Bridgewater come in, go 4-0 and get a silly contract from the Panthers. So he's had success in that system, being able to plug in guys that haven't been as good in other places. Jameis Winston and Teddy Bridgewater both come to mind. Again, those are small sample sizes, 4 or 5 games at a time, as opposed to over the course of a full season. You can say what happened when they didn't have Sean Payton. They stunk again. And if you're looking at the history of the New Orleans Saints before Sean Payton, they were a bottom 3 franchise in NFL history. So, that they became a power in the NFC is largely coincides with Sean Payton being there. I'd be pretty thrilled with Harbaugh or Payton if I was a Denver Broncos fan.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm a little less on Harbaugh, but you can convince me on that. I think you really need your draft picks because, again, you can talk coaching all day and building the culture, which does matter. But at the end of the day, it's about the Jimmies and Joes. So giving up that first-round pick for a team that does not have extra capital, for a team that's going to need cheap, cost-controlled players to overcome the seeming, now we can talk about, I guess, likely dead cap hit that'll come from Russell Wilson. Not having picks is a hard way to dig yourself out of this.
And real quick on the Teddy comment, Colin says Teddy was good in Minnesota before he got hurt, and he was good in New Orleans after he got hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see. First time we're hearing Sean Payton really be linked to the Broncos from a viable source. It does sound like it's coming more from the Broncos side of things versus the Sean Payton side of things, but we're going to monitor it. We're going to be here talking with you guys about it through the way. And another head coaching search, Scott. This is our second one together, and we'll be hopefully the last one for a while, but who knows? We'll see how it plays out. Make sure you guys are following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also, make sure you're following us at MHH Pod, at BFB_pod, and at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you're joining our Facebook community at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, make sure you're heading on over to YouTube, joining us on there, subscribing to Mile High Huddle, liking this show out there, the thumbs up, we greatly appreciate it, and share the show on your social media platforms, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, the TikTok. I know Scott's dipping his toe in the TikTok world these days. So we greatly appreciate that. Obviously, there's a lot of fantastic Broncos coverage out there, draft coverage out there, but we think that we're doing it different and a little bit better than anybody else out there. So we'd appreciate you guys if you'd support us that way as well. Shout out to everybody who came in and donated today to the show. I know that end of the year, sometimes maybe a little less money, a little more money, Christmas money coming in. Don't know if Mark contributed, but Mark's always a big contributor as well. Says he thinks Peyton will be in Arizona. Certainly possible. That's a team that he's been connected to, but we'll see.
I think the Rams become a much greater possibility than the Chargers or Cowboys now.
Watching
Sean McVay talked about possibly hanging it up last year. Could pull a Madden on us and win the thing and go out and be a great media person for the next 40 years of his life. I think the Rams are a decent possibility right now.
I'd put them number one as well. But it all comes down to Sean McVay. Maybe he wants to go spend more time with his smoking hot girlfriend. Would not blame him. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today.
Priorities. Come on, man.
Football around a bunch of smelly, sweaty dudes or hanging out on the beach. But appreciate you guys so much. A lot of fun things to talk about here. One day closer to the Broncos getting relevant again. Everyone have a good one. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. Happy New Year. Next time we see you, we will have some college football playoff games and know who's going to be in the championship and all those New Year's Six Bowls. Really excited for that. Make sure you're tuning in tonight. Great football game. Washington versus Texas in the Alamo Bowl. A lot of the good quarterbacks in that one too. That's probably one of the better bowls of the non-power ones this season. We'll see you guys later. Go Broncos.